Hey folks, I thought I would talk about a question or answer a question that I often get asked as I meet people and fix guitars, sell guitars, sort of thing. And that is new or used. Should I buy new or used? What's the best value? Well, to be honest with you, I never pay retail at all for anything musical. I just don't think there's a reason to. I don't think it's the best value. So I don't shop at places like Guitar Center or Musician's Friend unless I find some amazing new used deal on their website. And even then, that doesn't happen very often because they tend to mark up even their scratch and dent and their used stock as well. There are some retailers that cater to the used market a bit better. Music Go Round, occasionally you can a deal can be had there, either on their website or just going in. I've traded gear with them in the past and come out reasonably fine. But I tend not to shop at the big chains, either online or going to the big Walmart warehouse type shops, and that's basically Guitar Center, isn't it? I also don't buy instruments at Amazon very often. Again, there's no need to, even though Amazon does have a better price structure in some regard. A lot of times if you're shopping on eBay and you reference the price of something on Amazon, you'll find it's the same. A lot of the same sellers are selling on those places. But that's not to say that I would rule out completely shopping new. If you've watched some of my other videos, you'll have seen references to Rondo in the US, who sell Agile, SX, Douglas guitars. Excellent value if you can do some setup, and there again, and again, just look at some of my past videos, and you'll see some references to those guitars, and I'm going to do some more as well. And also, there is Thomann in Germany, where you can buy all brands, but the one that I'm most interested in is Harley Benton for value. Now with Thomann, the shipping's going to kill you if you're in the UK or the US, but they have a deal where you can buy 3 guitars and get $30, or I think it's $33 shipping, which is really excellent. And so if I'm buying from Thomann, I'll try to buy 3 models to get that particular shipping price. You might not need 3 guitars, so you know, maybe you can find a friend or put together an order with some other people, which is quite common. I've seen other YouTubers talking about that, Nick in the States and other people doing combined orders with friends and things like that. So there are places you can buy new. Recently I discovered Monoprice, which does the Idlewild models of guitars, which I think are very good value. They have an electric guitar line that I haven't looked at yet, hopefully in future videos, that seem to be very reasonable. So I'm going to say, apart from those 2 or 3 exceptions, it's always better to buy used, always. And of course when you're buying used, that most of the time means eBay or Craigslist, or perhaps you know, another auction site. I think is it the Salvation Army does one, and that's fraught with issues as well. If you're buying on eBay, for example, you're not always going to get a great bargain. There are sellers on there that are selling at retail and above retail. I don't know how they sell, but they must to keep going. So you know, cross-reference prices. Use the make an offer function. Don't insult them, but make a sensible offer. And a lot of times you'll get the item cheaper than is being offered. Also with eBay, most of the time you're buying a guitar from either somebody who's done with the guitar, or somebody who's trying to make money selling junk, or somebody who's drop shipping as a third party from a factory. So a lot of the guitars you get from eBay are going to require a modicum of setup, or a lot of setup, or even a lot of repair and restoration. I wouldn't recommend just the layperson buying from eBay unless they have a local luthier or they have some setup skills themselves. That's going to drive the price up. So if you get a bargain from eBay for $75–80 shipped, chances are you're probably going to have to take it to a shop and spend another $30, $40, $50 or more on getting that thing set up, or getting some rudimentary repairs done to the guitar. There are people like me on eBay that set up the guitars before they sell. I no longer sell on eBay. I used to. I got tired of their shenanigans, their fees, the shipping hassle. Also, I think they've become very pro-seller in recent years, and there's a lot of tears in selling on that site. People abuse your, buy your merchandise, abuse it for 2-3 weeks, then force a return on you. I got tired of that sort of activity that eBay encourages from buyers. So I tend not to sell. I sometimes buy, but I tend not to sell on there. Of course, there's Reverb springing up. I do keep a Reverb page. I'm trying to support Reverb. They seem to be more musically oriented. They seem to treat the buyer and the seller equally, and it's a community for musicians. I like that aspect of it, and you know, processing a sale seems easier and less painful than dealing with eBay. So Reverb is a good option if you want to buy used. Again, a lot of sellers are going to be drop shipping or shipping directly from a factory, and all you're going to get is the factory setup. So that's fraught with issues. That leaves local buying. I like to support mom and pop shops where I can, or the small independent music stores. A lot of them do carry used items. The problem with that is that they have a big overhead to account for, so they have to mark up their used and their new stock, and depending on the proprietor, that can mean, you know, a shift of 20–30% in price, and you can't really blame them. They're trying to subsist in a tough market, and often they're paying a rather large monthly lease to be where they're at. They're dropping like flies anyway, so it's tough. I try to support them where I can. I go to a couple of local shops where I like the proprietor to buy my strings and accessories, parts, things like that, where I can. But going to a used shop, you don't have the range, and sometimes the owner of the shop doesn't know or doesn't bother to employ anyone to do any setup. So, you know, when you pull something off the wall, it may not be playable, it may still need work. Some shops will give you a free setup if you buy an instrument, some won't. I tend to avoid pawn shops these days because the guitars are in frightful condition. There are 2 or 3 pawn shops in my area. Whenever I drop in to see what they've got, I find that they're charging way too much for something that's in pretty poor condition. They don't seem to have music people in those places. They don't seem to understand how things depreciate, how certain repairs or restoration needs for an instrument should drive down the price. And I rarely find anything worthwhile in those places, but every once in a while you get somebody who's willing to sell off guitars that have been hanging around for a while that need work. So I wouldn't shop in those places unless you know how to do some setup. That leaves Craigslist, and that's how I mostly move guitars when I need to. The good thing about it is you don't have to pay fees, you don't have to pay shipping. The problem is that you deal with an incredible amount of flakes. and unreliable people. It's painful in a way to sell stuff on Craigslist, because it really is disparaging. How many people contact you and then when you reply you never hear from them again? How many people go back and forth with you, 3, 4, 5 emails, texts, don't set up a time to come, you never hear from them again? How many people you finally wrangle a time out and a commitment out of and don't show up? Or how many people do show up and try to lowball you with an insulting offer upon arrival? So that has its problems, but it still seems to be the best place to buy and sell used guitars. Buying on Craigslist is difficult. Again, most people selling on Craigslist are just people getting rid, for whatever reason, of a guitar. A lot of times the guitars are damaged or in need of setup, and the person selling them has no idea as to the amount of damage or setup that it needs. Sometimes you get people like me who work on instruments, who set them up before sale. Obviously, they're probably going to want a little bit more for the work that they've done. I set up everything before I sell it. I do a full fret job if I have to. I dress the frets, I set the action, I check and adjust the truss rod, I check the nut slots. I normally change strings unless the strings happen to be fairly new upon arrival. So I put quite a bit of time and parts into stuff that I'm selling. When I'm buying on Craigslist, when I'm dealing with other sellers, I find that a lot of people are either not knowledgeable or unreasonable about their pricing. For instance, I gave you the example recently of somebody that was selling a Yamaha FS700. Those are $199 from Amazon, free shipping, warranty. You get a new one for $200 from Amazon. It only takes a click to find that out. A quick search on Google. I found 2 or 3 sellers that are for some reason trying to sell one used, well used, for $250, $275, even $300. They just haven't bothered to research the guitar. They're guesstimating when they list a price, or perhaps they have a bill to pay off and they want to make the guitar equal to that amount. You have to be aware of that also on Craigslist. People don't know the value of what they have. I found that people selling used stuff or people that sort of do garage sales and thrifting and stuff like that often overvalue their equipment or whatever they're selling. They think it's more than it actually is. So it always pays off to do a bit of research. I look up everything. I have manuals on models and makes and things like that. I don't expect you to, but a lot of the information is online. A lot of times you can just go on eBay and Amazon and just find out what something is going for. For example, here's an example. Here's something I found recently. It's not very well known. It's a Pinko classical guitar. It's a nice spruce, beautiful rosewood back. I did a bit of research on it, and this guitar or guitars like it from this maker, which are not too prevalent on the market. Some sell in the 150, 200 range, and some people are trying to sell these for as much as $300 to $400. So the value of this thing, since there are so few of them being sold, is somewhere in that window. I'm being sensible and probably going to price this around somewhere around $200. I think it's comparable with La Patrie Classicals, definitely C5 Cordoba C5s, maybe the C3. It's in that range. It's a nice solid top. It's Japanese made, which is quite desirable these days. And because it has some use on it, I don't think it'd be right to try and hit somebody up for the higher end of that price spectrum. But I spent 5 minutes, looking this up and then decide to pay the asking price. And of course, when I got the guitar, the action was set incredibly high. It hadn't been played, it possibly had been stored unplayed for some time. So I had to do some work on the saddle. These guitars don't have truss rods, so all of the adjustment has to come at the saddle and the nut. If it's warped, you're possibly out of luck. You're in neck reset territory. So things like this, you can get incredible prices on them, or you can run into people that overvalue them and want to charge you too much. So Craigslist is fraught with that sort of tension, and of course you can educate somebody that's willing to be educated, or you can offend them if you offer them less. When I make an offer on anything for any reason from any venue, I always give reasons. This is what's wrong with the guitar, this is what's required to fix it, this is the kind of investment I'm going to have to put into it. It's a risk purchase, because obviously when you buy used, you normally don't get a warranty or any kind of return. So would you account for that in the price and accept this particular offer? But I always find, to answer the question that we set from the outset, I always find that you get more value buying used. The prices are roughly half of what you would pay new, sometimes even less. Not only that, you're buying a guitar, take this one for instance, it's got some wear, as you can see. You're buying a guitar that's played in, that has been used, that the wood has had time to settle down, and you have more of an idea of what this guitar, how this guitar is going to perform throughout its lifespan. If you buy a new guitar, you don't always get those assurances. New guitars often take time to settle down, to play in. The woods, the joinery, the parts, particularly the tuners, may perform well at first and over time become compromised, depending on how good the make and the model of the guitar is. So if you buy that Yamaha 700, it might be better to buy one slightly used, that's been played for some time, particularly if it's been in your area and it's sort of acclimated to particular conditions in your area, rather than buying a new one that's going to get drop shipped from a factory, shipped over various time zones and climate changes, to arrive at your door to be played for the first time. So I think there are various advantages to buying used as opposed to new. So that's where I generally tend to go. I also find that you get a much more broad array of spectrum for buying used guitars. You can find some really interesting things like this that you will never find new, at least that's affordable anyway. You can often customize or restore or adjust a used guitar into your particular playing style and have a really good instrument. Not to say that you can't do that with a new guitar, but I think there is a settling in period where the guitar is going to be a bit of a mystery. I often, when I get new guitars, let them sit for 2 or 3 days just to acclimate before I even try adjusting and doing setup on them. Used guitars tend to settle much quicker when you receive them. So there's a few tips on whether to buy a new or used guitar. I hope you found it helpful. Feel free to post your own experiences in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.